Welcome to Rabble Rants. I'm Santiago Helo Quintero, and alongside Jesse McLean, we're going to unpack the stories that have us most riled up and challenge the narratives around them.
Okay, here's the lead-in. There's this scene in Batman where Catwoman leans in to whisper into the ear of billionaire Bruce Wayne, and she says something along the lines of, "How do you all think that you could live so large while leaving so little for the rest of us?" And I have to tell you, that was the clip that came to my mind when I first heard that CEO of United Health, Brian Thompson, had been shot in New York. I mean, when I first heard it, it could have been anybody at that point. These people live their own lives, jilted wives, angry business partners. But I think something deep down inside of me knew that it was actually an act of class warfare. I mean, there was no love lost. I think in general, when you look online, the responses ranged from completely indifferent to the man's death to gleeful. And I am not even going to apologize for those feelings whatsoever. I feel like, when we're coming on to record here and we're wondering how we can convey how we're feeling while still being responsible. And it's a tightrope. It's a tightrope because, sure, we're talking about an act of violence in broad daylight on a city street, and there's like all these reasons where you would want to condemn it. But when you understand the level of violence that this man himself inflicted, when you think of violence as the things that cause harm and death to others, I don't know how you work to condemn that, to be honest. Police have arrested someone. We will unpack the police response in a second. Luigi Mangione was arrested in Pennsylvania. Mangione. We're not going to play into any stereotypes, are we?
Oh, there's so many fun things.
That's not where you're going with this, is it, Santiago?
Maybe a little.
And they caught him Penn State. He's awaiting extradition to New York right now. And there's, obviously with anything like this, there's the conspiracy theories that float around it. And we're actually going to talk about one of them. The police responded as they do when rich people are murdered, right? There was a manhunt. There was actually a really funny video of them searching Central Park for evidence. And it's like 6 cops with their hands in their pockets, like shuffling around in the bushes. One of the older ones like picks up a stick, like not a searcher's walking stick or anything, just something he found on the ground. And he's like poking around in the bushes. And I don't even think the cops actually wanted to catch. I mean, not the beat cops. I don't think they even cared to catch this one. The general attitude in New York was like, I didn't see nothing. I mean, that's what it should have been. However, there was a tip turned into police in Pennsylvania, and he was arrested at a McDonald's with apparently a gun ghost on him that was firing the 9mm bullets with casings found at the scene that apparently read "Deny, Defend, and Depose." He was also caught with a manifesto of sorts and some fake ID. This is according to police reports. The fact that we're regurgitating police reports kind of bothers me, but it's all part of the story, I guess. We usually critique against this, but it's what I've got right now. But we will dive deeper than simply reading it back to you. Santiago, before we started recording, you asked me about conspiracy theories, and I kind of cringed because, I do want to focus on the class analysis of what happened, particularly people's responses to it. But when you went into it, I thought, oh shit, that is a rabbit hole that I don't really want to go down, but it's part and parcel with what we talk about on Blueprints. And it actually is pertinent to a couple of the episodes that we've done.
I don't like getting distracted by conspiracy theories in this, but like whenever you have someone of this status who is murdered, it does make you see like how the police respond differently to these situations versus other situations when it's like the people that they actually want to protect versus like, a poor person they couldn't give less shits about. And then, just the way that they caught him like brings up some interesting questions, right? Like, I don't know if he wanted to be caught. I can't say anything for certain, but like the low probabilityness of this occurring, right? Because you can't imagine that this guy was like, it had only been how many days is it?
Like three days later, he's still carrying around the murder weapon.
3 days. So like even if you go to a different McDonald's twice a day for those 3 days, that's still like 6 times that you've gone out for food. And given how little clear footage there were about this, like the odds of being recognized by someone who even would give a shit enough about that. Like, I gotta be honest, like at my workplace, I'll have like people who come in the day after having been there, and I'm pretty good at facial recognition, and I won't recognize them because I've been working so much that like my brain has completely erased that memory. It made me wonder, okay, like how did they really catch this guy, and whether or not police are using technology which is not within the awareness of the public that they have, that they maybe haven't gotten like, you know, the legal approval to use, that may be outside of certain laws. And given the fact that it was like this customer who told the workers at McDonald's supposedly, hey, that looks like that guy who killed that CEO in New York, that did bring up like, okay, so this guy who was the person to recognize has completely disappeared and no one knows who they are. Am I really going to sit here and think like that's the likely story?
And let's say everyone was glued to their fucking screens. Like, we saw the images that they did provide. Okay, there wasn't many, but there was inconsistencies in them anyway. But let's say there were tips coming in. How did they filter through that tip so damn quickly? Here, I'm going to kind of connect the dots a little bit, because we did an episode back with the anarchist collective Unicorn Riot, and they had done an article on France and the increase in surveillance technology that they implemented for the Olympics. It was like huge breach of security. I mean, like they were going to basically connect CCTV cameras, all kinds of modes of surveillance together into a database to be able to filter through it very quickly for all kinds of different facial recognition, patterns recognition. And it was promised to be temporary. And even within the legislation, it was worded that it wasn't arrestable evidence that's being collected. I may not be using the right terminology here, but to explain, you could help figure out what was going on. It could help shape your case in a way, but the evidence that is gathered through that technology can't be used to convict or just imply wrongdoing. It was just to be an added tool to police. So what Santiago is implying is that police have this level of technology that would be able to filter through and use facial recognition on different cameras throughout the United States to find an individual. But they couldn't then just arrest him themselves at McDonald's. They would need to have it appear as though it came in from the public just by chance, right? To avoid anybody asking about any technology that they should or should not be using. And this, like I said, this isn't a dreamscape. This is a technology we know got approval in France, albeit for a small amount of time, if you want to believe that they would actually remove all of that technology from their possession and all of that knowledge that they gained after the Olympics. I mean, that's up to the French people to decide, but it's not a stretch to think that U.S. authorities have done this, and that's how they were able to find him. And like I said, it's definitely part of what we talk about in terms of police tactics and how they'll be used. I mean, to catch a murder suspect, most of the time we'll be like, okay, that's a good use of police resources if there are any. This time, though, I'm not so sure. You saw memes coming from very unlikely sources this time around. You were talking about the comment section on a Ben Shapiro video where it was just clear that on both sides of the aisle, politically speaking, or both left and right wingers looked at this and were like, meh. Like, at the very least, there was not an outpouring of grief coming from the far right either. I mean, the talking heads and the rich folks might have tried to generate some, but they weren't having it. So I found a sense of, I don't know what the word is, but satisfaction seeing that folks were identifying on a class basis. It was sort of like a temperature check of the room, right? Like, what would you do if... And everyone was like, we wouldn't do shit.
I ain't seen nothing.
Actually, we're actually going to start talking about this healthcare system. No one's talking about Brian or his family, and I'm not going to. Now, when you search even a CTV article I pulled up to, the basic facts of the case include a couple paragraphs on just how bad United Health is as a company. So even as like mainstream news are trying to report on this, they can't help but include the fact that these companies are killing millions of people every year.
Yeah, it's and literally like they are killing them. Like, it is social murder. Like, and everyone's been affected by it. Like, everyone in the States knows someone who's been affected by it. Like, expecting people to be sympathetic is it's ridiculous, and it shows how out of touch a lot of these right wing shitheads are with their base. One thing like that came to mind to me, by the way, just like the day that it happened, right? It's because it is. It's my birthday on December 4th as well, and it's also the anniversary of the assassination of Fred Hampton, chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party, who was famously assassinated by the police because of his successful class organizing beyond all racial barriers and anything else. Like, he was just a prolific organizer, killed at 21 years old, right? And so when I think about Fred Hampton and I think about this CEO, the same day, it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna, like, I'm supposed to give a shit about this guy's murder? I don't know. And even here in Canada, where, I mean, we still have private healthcare insurance companies and people are still denied coverage in different ways. I mean, you'll get life-saving care if you need it, but let's not pretend like we're that much better. But we don't have the same shared experience in the same way as they have in the States. But even here, everything I've seen in Canada has been pretty much the identical response of people in the United States. It was funny. I was at a restaurant yesterday, and I heard the table next to me, a group of like 8 people talking about this, and they were laughing about it. And one of them was like, "Oh, but this was a murder. It's not right, And everyone else was like, "Do you know how many people this guy has murdered? Essentially, do you know how many deaths that this CEO has led to? Like, I'm not like I don't feel bad about this at all."
Let's talk about just how bad United Health is. Like, the U.S. health system, I think most Canadians know because we love to pit ourselves against this. Like, it's like one thing that sets us apart. So we like to think. But to give you an idea, the U.S., out of like all the high income country, they spend more on their healthcare than anyone else.
Twice as much as we do.
Yes, but they have the lowest life expectancy amongst those same countries. They have more sick people, and they still even have more individuals struggling with medical debt. And that's because these U.S. insurance companies, for the most part, they love to, deny, defend, and depose. What those words meant were first denials. So like United Health is one of the worst healthcare companies out there in terms of denials. They're about 33%. And that is just from figures from 2022. Healthcare providers described in 2023 that a switch was flipped, that even more life-saving devices and treatments were just completely being denied. And there is an appeal system, and typically they just reaffirm their ruling. So that's the defend part. They defend their denials. And all this time, the person insured is getting sicker and sicker. On average, Americans pay $650 a month for single coverage. That's like almost $8,000 a year. If you have children, spouses, more. You're already sick, more. You're old when you buy the insurance, more. You live somewhere in a poor neighborhood, more. There's a litany of reasons that you would pay even more than that and still face the same denial rate. And even after Brian's death and the reasons given for it, whether you think they're justified or not, you've got his boss getting on a Zoom call or whatever, broadcasting himself to the rest of the company. This guy says he vows to continue the legacy of Brian Thompson to combat unnecessary care. He says for sustainability reasons. And Elon Musk, he doubles down as well. He says the left-wingers are just so out of touch, they don't understand that these CEOs have a duty to turn profits for their shareholders, no matter how ruthless. So here you are, you have your oligarchs standing up there telling us that we deserve to die so they can turn a profit for their shareholders. And they don't expect any blowback for this. That shocks me. I think they are getting a real reality check here when they are looking at the public's response to this. I mean, I hope they are, because it's unfathomable to me that they can think that they can continue this behavior following this. I mean, we've seen, they're scrubbing their websites of exec bios first. They're hiring more security, but we've actually seen some reversals in a few policies that got a lot of press, a lot of bad press. They retracted some of them. I mean, like, those are just little tiny morsels to feed the public to try to calm them down. But really, people are worked up about this healthcare system, and rightly so. This fucker headed United Health. They are like the 8th largest company in the world and made almost $300 billion in profits in the medical field, right? Where we shouldn't have profits at all. This one company, with a 33% denial rate, made $300 billion. And that's kind of been steady for them. This isn't like a banner year. They regularly pull in that kind of money. And this narrative around unnecessary care, because CEOs are repeating it. It was part of the mantra of United Health. That's what they tell healthcare providers, why they're implementing all these checks and balances. So you go to the doctor now. The doctor needs to basically get all of your care approved beforehand, or else you'll go broke, because if you find out it's not going to be covered and it's too late. But that used to be experimental stuff they weren't sure would be covered. Now it's almost everything. And they say it's to prevent unnecessary care, which is similar to like the welfare scam narrative that like you can point to one or two individuals or whatever. They create this vision that a lot of people are getting welfare when they don't need it. But it's worse. It's medical care. Who the fuck is getting medical care they don't need? You have to drag people to the doctor. Nobody wants needles and medical treatment they don't need. And so they get to justify all of this, all of these delays in treatment. So even if it is provided and approved, so for the 66% that are approved, days or weeks go by while you wait for this treatment. And 49 million Americans are insured by United Health. So 49 million people, 33% of them have been denied by Brian Thompson, are looking at this event going, well, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't have my facts all in order here, but I did read something about how they implemented an AI software to automatically deny people that was shown to be inaccurate, and yet even after that, they continued to use this software. That statement by Elon Musk is just, it really shows like how disconnected, like that we don't understand it, or no, we understand perfectly, and that's why we say that there's no room for profit in healthcare. All of the measurements that you can use here show that the United States is not giving adequate care, and it also, like, there's so much in healthcare that goes beyond just treating things when they become a problem, right? Like, you need to be giving preventative care. You know, you have to be identifying risk factors and in doing so, that'll actually save money from the healthcare system. And when that is so frequently denied, like, you end up actually putting such a larger financial burden on the health of an economy. Like, having people not be healthy, not have access to get care, to become healthy, from their stupid fucking fiscal conservative standpoint, which I always, refer back to show how like idiotic their own how incoherent their own ideological beliefs is. Like, this is not healthy for an economy. It's not healthy for a society.
It could be like that one point in U.S. politics, perhaps. Maybe it would be unique here because of their circumstances that could unite both sides, like, of the working class. Like, there are no two sides of the working class. Just there's some folks that they don't understand. That really is the gist of it. And I truly believe that now, because there's just this tweet that kind of went viral. And it originally was a post by someone who had put up their kids' homework. And they were really, really concerned because what it did, it was like a table of political ideologies, right? So the right and the left. And it just listed some of the tenets of these things. Like, I'm just going to give you some examples. The left believes that humans are naturally good, and the right believes that humans are naturally competitive or flawed. The left this is probably one of the better examples. The left believes in equality of outcome. The right believes equality of opportunity. Left has a preference typically for larger government or governance, and the right has a preference for smaller government. Anyway, it wasn't all that controversial, but the conservatives were worked up because they thought it demonized them. But it's because they actually looked at the tenets of what they're espousing and they realized it was bad. They looked and could see that it was all good things in the left column and all bad things in the right. And when it's really laid out that simply for people, it's clear. I mean, obviously the folks that were worked up weren't kind of getting that connection, right? They just felt like they were being insulted, but they couldn't point to any one of those tenets of their ideology that was untrue to them, right? But perhaps, like we talk about tenant organizing, like 30% of Canadians are tenants. So if you could organize around tenant rights, I mean, that is a huge bulk of the population and a very specific class, right, of renters. And so the same goes for, I think, the medical insurance, because the ultra wealthy in the United States, they get denied a claim, they can pay it. I mean, when we're talking about the ultra wealthy, it's not a problem. But for almost everybody else, it is. And even I think surveys show that 50% of Americans have been denied at one point in their life or another. And then you have folks who can't even get health insurance because of pre-existing conditions. Even all the changes to Obamacare have still resulted in what you're seeing right now. So it's, yeah, like, we're not advocating for violence here, but I can see how people got there. I can definitely see how people got there and how it's appealing to both sides because it's just laid bare. Like, you're showing a man that is just defiantly denying people life-saving care, and explicitly for the reasons that he needs to make rich people more money, and will say it out loud. It's like that clip you played from the Nestle guy.
Yeah.
Or about the Nestle guy.
Yeah, it was the time that Bill Burr was joking about how, like, there's a guy from Nestle, like the CEO of Nestle, who doesn't believe that water should be a human right and that guy should be hunted down and shot. Right? Like, I mean, when you're denying people these things that they need to live, it is a form of inflicting violence. I mean, there's a very simple term for it, which is social murder, right? We talk about that a lot on this show. Like, whenever you're taking essential needs away from people, it is going to lead to people dying. It is in a way killing them. I feel like in 2024,